Hello, this is Tom from Never Center. I'm going to show you in this video the new features that we've added to Pixelmash 2022.2. Just show there it is, 2022.2. And this is a huge update. New in this is full vector layer support. So in a previous version of Pixelmash, we added SVG import, where you could have vector layers that you brought in via SVG, but you couldn't do any editing or creating of your own vector layers. And now in Pixelmash 2022.2, we've got full editable vector layers that are non-destructive and that are really great, especially for animation with tweening. So I've got this flame thing open. Let me do a new project so I can walk you through how these vector tools work. So I made a new project here with a base resolution of 64 by 64. So you can see up here we've got this new tool. This is the curve tool used to draw and adjust curves and shaped in vector layers. If I try to use it here in a normal 64 by 64 bitmap layer, it'll pop up this warning that I need to use vector layers. So we've got a vector, add new vector layer button here next to the one for adding at the pixelized resolution and the full resolution. So if I click that, it'll add a new vector layer. You can also do that from the edit menu. New vector layer. And then I activate the curve tool and excuse me, we've done some a little bit of inventing of how the curve tool works. So there are a lot of things that are standard from Bezier tools. So if I just click and drag, it starts a new curve. You can see it'll preview where the curve will go as I'm now clicking and dragging to add new points. And it's using for the curve colors, the stroke and the fill, it's using whatever my current layer or my current color was up here. So if I'm making a flame, maybe I'll click and drag. If I just click and don't drag, it'll make a sharp point. I can click and drag to make curvy points. Let's make some flame kind of things. Click and drag, and then you can see to close a curve, I just hover. If I have one of the end nodes selected and then hover over the other end one, it'll show it closing. Press escape and click this one and then hover over that one, it'll still let me close. So let's close that. All right, so I can move these around. You can see it's pixelizing and updating nicely. Now our curve tools rely on the right click menu quite a bit. So if I hover over a given node and I right click on it, you can see I've got different options for different kinds of handles. So currently this node has no handle, so it will stay sharp wherever I put it. And if I do sharp handles, then there's not continuity between the handles, but I can control the curvature. And smooth handles, sort of like this, they stay opposite each other and it goes smooth. And you can do things like delete the node or break the curve at the node so that it'll be open. Let me undo that. You can copy curves, delete curves, select all the curved nodes if you want to move it. Anyway, so play around with that. And there's lots that we'll be able to add to that in the future, so we're excited about that. You can see in the layer properties, this is where I would change the colors, so I can have the stroke and the fill. For making a flame, we'd want it to be some sort of like an orange or a yellow or something. Now, let's get to the animation, because this is there's a lot of, it's nice to just draw a lot of static pixel art with vectors and have it be non-destructive. And again, this saves with the file, so it's not like you're locked into these pixels. You can always come back and edit these vectors. But for animation, it can do some really neat things. So let's add some frames to this. Let's make it like 5 frames. And I'm going to shorten the frame length to 0.15 seconds. Okay, so like with image or bitmap layer, you would do an image keyframe wherever you wanted to draw a new frame. And it's the same sort of concept with these vector layers, where I'll click image keyframe here, and now it copied and pasted basically the same curve from the first frame. But this frame, if I move these around, just like make this flame dance a little bit, you can see already over here, that was my first frame, this is my last frame, and it's tweening between them. So it's smoothly animating between where these curves are in the first frame and where they are in the fifth frame. So it's interpolating all of those in between frames, hence the word tweening. And you can see on the layer options, like I can turn that off, and then it will, I could put these curves wherever I wanted for each individual frame if I wanted to image keyframe all keyframes and not have it do the tweening or whatever. But that lets you choose that. So let's turn that back on, and I'm also going to make this do boomerang, so it will go back and forth. And so it's neat that you can basically, I don't love how this looks. This looks kind of terrible. Let's say, what if the first frame looked more like this? And you can see it's updating the animation in the preview window here in real time. So as I'm changing the first frame, it's altering the whole animation with the tweens to show me what it looks like. And so let's say the last frame, we want to be more, something a little less dumb. My other one that I made, I could spend a little bit more time on to get it just right. But let's try something like this. That's fine enough for now. I'm going to remove a frame. The other nice thing about the tweening is that you can add as many frames as you want between it, and it will make the animation smoother, and you can speed it up by changing the seconds per frame. Then of course you can add all of your layer effects that you might want. So what I had on the other one was like I like to use the glow effect, but make it an inner glow. You can turn the opacity up and the divisions down. You can see how that kind of makes it look flamey like that. Another thing that is kind of fun to do, let's find a good look for this. Let's do 6 pixels. There. What I can do, I can add another layer that's like a child of this original flame. So this would be like the outer flame, and this one would be like the inner flame. And then let me make sure I'm on frame 1. Then I can draw a whole new, let's do this with a fill, and let's make it like a bright yellow. I can draw a new layer with these vector tools that is inside of this other one and clipped to it. So got this outer flame. Let me tell it not to apply the vector effect or the layer effects to the children, and let me tell this one to clip to its parent. All right. So now we've got this sort of heart of the flame, and let's make it animated. So let's go to frame 4, turn on image keyframe, do something like this and like this. Anyway, you get the point. This is not I'm not making the awesomest art in real time, but you can then like add opacity or whatever. You can add more layer effects to this inner one, like another inner glow. We go to blue or something. Anyway, lots of neat stuff you can do. And let me see what else I wanted to show. So once you've got an animation like this, it's also kind of neat because first of all, just being a vector layer, you can always change the resolution, and it will, using the resolution slider up here, and it will pixelize it accurately to that resolution. So you can make different resolutions of assets or whatever. You can also take your whole animation. Again, make sure I'm on frame 1. And if I like duplicate this layer using this duplicate layer button and drag this over here, I can like scale this, and this can be its own thing that works at a different resolution. You can like layer these on top of each other with different transforms to sort of make the shapes and animation a little bit more complex. But the fact of these being vector-based layers, I can always come back in here and edit the vectors, and it's non-destructive and essentially infinite resolution, so that whatever resolution I set this to, it'll just update and work with that automatically. So another few things that I want to show. Let's delete this. Let's delete this. Let's stop this animation for a minute. So each vector layer has essentially one vector shape in it, but you can have multiple curves. So this shape here with this one curve, if I use this tool, let me just draw a little square here for an example. So this is a second shape, a second curve in that same vector layer. And so if I select all of the nodes of this, you can see if there are multiple curves and they overlap in a layer, then that it's a subtractive essentially. So let me turn off the effect so you can see what's happening here. So if you want to do a curve with like a cutout in it, you just put a second curve in there in the same layer, and it will be subtractive. So that's how you do that. Let's delete that curve. All right. Okay, so let me just show, just for fun, another little animation that I made out of this octopus one. Let me play this. So for this, you can see over here, it's got these sort of smoothly moving tentacle layers, and this version of him in the background that I just duplicated this foreground one. I can do this again just to show you how that works. Duplicate this. Make sure we're in the first frame. Just move it somewhere else and translate it. Let's put it behind the first guy. Like that. And put him back here. And then this other one back here, I've got a layer effect that's just a colorized layer effect. So let's copy this layer and then paste layer effects. And we'll do that same sort of colorizing on him, and actually removed the outline to make the legs skinnier on those background ones. But if you look at this main octopus, I've got a few divisions here. So I've got his head, which is just this simple curve right here. You can see in the animation, like, I've got 2 animation frames for the head, and it tweens between them. And then I just made one tentacle basically, and made a tween for it. And then I copied and pasted that 7 times to make 8 tentacles, and then moved them around a little bit to make them wiggle slightly differently from each other. They're all very sort of simple shapes with the tweening, and you put that together and it makes quite a complex animation that, again, if you want to like just insert a bunch of frames to make it smoother and speed it up or whatever, it's totally simple to make this much more sort of temporally high resolution animation. So that's just some of the really neat things that you can do with vector layers. It's a really powerful concept for pixel art. And I wanted to show a couple more things real quick. One is just that, let's see. Let me shorten this again. 5. couple things with vector layers that you can do. One is that you don't have to keep something as a vector layer. So let me just get rid of these other background octopi, and stop this animation. And oops. So I've got this octopus layer that's got these vectors in it. But if I wanted to like hand draw the pixels, I can convert this vector layer basically into a raster layer, and it will let me go through each of the frames, and then I can tweak them by hand. So if I come up to edit, and then I do bake layer resolution and effects, I click on that, this layer that had all those sub layers and they all had vectors in them is now pixelized to the current resolution up here. And you can see on the animation it's just got a different rasterized hand-drawn frame for each frame. So then I could go in and just, edit the pixels of a given frame. It's like I could just erase stuff from this one frame, and then you can see you can basically hand draw all of the frames if you wanted to. The other thing that you can do is, actually let's make a new project. Another interesting use of vector tools is just as a reference layer. So maybe you still want to hand draw your pixels, but you want to put something in a vector layer. I'll just make a dumb shape back here. Don't know what this is, but I can take this layer and click the reference button, and it makes it into a reference layer. And so it'll just draw a thin line, and then I can basically trace over that if I'm just like painting in a layer with my regular pixel art tools, and follow the lines of my reference layer or whatever, which is neat. But you can also, again, do animation. And if I go back to this vector layer and let me make it not a reference layer because it won't let me edit it if it's a reference layer. But I can add an image keyframe, and I can move points around, maybe how I want it to be animated, and then make sure tweening is turned on. And then with this animation, it will tween between those two vector shapes. But also as a reference layer, if I just want to use that for tracing, basically, I turn it on as a reference layer. And if I go out of that tool, now when I'm doing my painting, it will tween the vector-based reference layer for me, so I can hand draw the pixels using my vectors as a reference. So just again, some ideas of, I think you'll be able to catch the power of this. But there's just so much that you can do in a pixel art program with a full set of vector tools. And just really quickly, the other thing that frequent users will notice is that these buttons right here are new. These used to be check marks that took up quite a bit of vertical space. And in vector layers, since we've got other stuff we wanted to put in there, we condensed these top things down into just image buttons. And we'll keep looking for ways to make the interface more compact and efficient, but that's one of the things that we added in there. And one last note is that when you're importing an SVG, previously that would import the whole thing into one layer, even if it had a bunch of different curves and shapes in it. Now that will import each of those in an SVG file into separate layers, so that you can go edit them shape by shape with this edit tool. So just one difference from the previous version of Pixelmash. And I think that's it. But we would love to see what you can make with this. I think the possibilities are endless. And if you get a chance, then come up and use the send feedback button up here and let us know what you think, other ideas that you have for this. And like I say, there's lots of things we have planned for expanding just basically the all the different ways you can control curves using the Bezier tool. We're going to add a lot of snapping things and other things to be able to get precise curves. So we hope you love it. Thanks.